speaking too much. Yeah, everybody cope different. Yeah. Maybe I'm doing too much, but I don't give a fuck. Guys in my cup, whole gang in the cut. What the fuck? Guys in my blood, whole thing in the blood. Going up, shawty blow me up, bringing on my phone, pick me up, pull up on me now. I'm way too driving drunk. I'ma take another trip and I'll be alright. I'm just trying to keep my shit together. I've been just doing whatever I think will make me feel better. Yeah, this shit keep me up all night. Yeah. Have another one and I'll be alright. Probably be up until the sunrise. Hate the way I'm feeling, but it's alright. Another round, I'll be out of my mind. I smoke this stuff to get me out of my mind. I swear this shit has got me out of my mind. Another trip to get me out of my mind.
What's up, everybody? Totally didn't mean to start that over. But what's up, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the SpotLight podcast. I know this is something that I've been meaning to do for a while, where I bring on just kind of some special guests, professionals, or others in their field, whether that be filmmaking, entertainment, mental health, religion, politics. The goal is to kind of be talk about everything and be a show about everything. But I'm really excited about today's first episode and today's first guest. I've been following him, I want to say, for about 2 years now, and his whole mission, what he's doing over on his channel and on X and his site, which all of those descriptions where you can find him are in the link below, and I am really looking forward to today's conversation. So with that, I'm going to bring on Tim Whitaker from the new Evangelicals. How are you doing today, good sir?
Bro, what song is that intro?
That's my friend.
I like that song. I was vibing to it.
I help produce some music here in Vegas too.
Okay, fellow musician. Yeah. All right, I'm digging it. I was like, this has a vibe. I like it. I'll have to get that off of you after we end talking. That's great.
Absolutely. But man, I kind of as we talked a little bit before, I said a little before, I started my deconstruction journey right around COVID and stuff. And so a little bit after that is when I started, really looking into it and doing research and watching videos, looking for people like me, a community in a sense. I found you guys, I found a couple others. And it's just a real honor to have you here as my first guest, man.
Well, it honestly, it does mean a lot. So thank you for having me on. I'm honored to be the first guest. Hopefully, I could do it justice.
Oh, I think you're gonna do just fine. So actually, some quick thoughts. I know you had last night your live debate coverage.
Yeah.
Just real quick. What did you think? How did you think it went? Honestly. I thought it was very much like an Obama-Romney kind of vibe. It felt more civil than I expected. I feel like both of them were like giving each other moments of like, I agree with Waltz on this, or I agree with JD on this. What concerns me is that JD is able to code switch really well. He can say things about childless cat ladies and things about how, he'll write the forward to people who are authoring Project 2025. He'll write the forward to their books. And then he'll go on and say, well, we'd be more moderate on abortion. I'm like, I don't really think that you actually believe that, because the people you hang out with are borderline abortion abolitionists, And so, if you do, you got to think that Trump gave him a good scolding after that.
I definitely think that the Christian nationalists, and we are on X streaming this, so your Ali Stuckeys of the world, your Samuel Says, they're going to go hard, I think, after JD Vance on those comments, because they really believe that abortion for any reason under any circumstance should be completely outlawed, no matter what. And so, I think that, frankly, I think that JD knew he was in the national spotlight. He knows that statistically these views on abortion are not popular with most Americans. And so he did what he had to do to kind of come across more moderate, despite the fact that he was just hanging out with Lance Wallnau, who's a major Christian nationalist, the architect of the 7 Mountain Mandates mandate. And so, he hangs out with extreme people. That being said, I think it fell apart for Vance big time at the end when he couldn't even admit that the 2020 election was not stolen and that Trump lost, which, again, what's he going to say? Is he really going to go against Trump and say, yeah, Trump lost? No, he would be kicked out. Trump would have his head on a silver platter, right? This is the
Yeah.
problem when your allegiance is tied to a certain political candidate and you essentially bow the knee and kiss the ring on behalf of someone who lies all the time, right?
Yeah.
This power thing around Trump, he has all these yes men, and now JD is in the vortex, which is why he can call Trump Hitler, America's Hitler, a couple of years ago, and then all of a sudden do a 180 and he kisses the ring and says, yes, I will now follow you, Trump. You're my new leader. And here he is on stage being defensible. But overall, I will say I thought that both of them were well spoken. I thought that the debate was good. Walls, I think, came across very like, come on, guys, can't we all kind of get along here? Like, I want to find the common ground. But I think
Absolutely.
statistically, VP debates don't really move the needle one way or another. So I'm not sure if it's
Yeah.
going to change anything, but I did enjoy it overall.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. We talked a little bit about that last night. Very, like you said, very Obama Romney and Obama
Yeah.
McCain respectful, and so I at least I was surprised by that. But
Yeah.
let's kind of get started here. Where did this whole deconstruction journey begin for you, and then how did that lead into? Okay, Cowboys, we know you're going to lose this week. Thank you. And how did that lead into something like the New Evangelicals and starting that organization?
Well, my detractors think that I've always just been a closeted Marxist who hates God, and I was never a true Christian. Which
Aren't
is kind
we
of,
all?
yeah, aren't we all? Right? I mean, it's hilarious. But no, I mean, the long story short is that I'm a product of white evangelicalism. I was homeschooled. I inhaled the theology. I believed the theology. I made a profession of faith early on in my life. Got baptized early on. Was always all in on this Jesus thing. I did a lot of parachurch ministry. I worked for Child Evangelism Fellowship, which is one of the biggest missions organizations reaching boys and girls with the gospel of Christ. I helped plant churches. I was on the worship team. And
Yeah.
I want to be clear, like my life reflected this. I wasn't living a dualistic lifestyle. My actions lined up with the values that I held regarding sexuality, regarding speech, regarding just how I carried myself. So I was always all in. And the work I'm doing today is because I'm still all in as a Christian, even if my own tradition has essentially called me a heretic, because I'm calling out a lot of the damage that they're doing, whether they see it or not. But I think that, people often cite 2016, and I think that is a moment for me where the dam really started to break. I think there were always little
Wow.
cracks. I always had little questions.
Yeah.
I was brought up more Calvinist, so be a predestination, God predestining people for heaven, or to be saved or not. That John MacArthur, Paul Washer type of theology was kind of my bread and butter. I just started having questions, and the thing is, evangelicalism is fine with your questions as
Yeah.
long as you arrive at their predetermined answers, right? And
Exactly.
it was when I started having different answers, or I started entertaining different answers, that I realized I'm not sure if this particular vision of God and justice and love is making sense to me. Trump just broke that wide open when I watched the same people who told me that God would never bless my marriage or my life if I was having premarital sex or if I was masturbating, suddenly telling me, well, how dare you not vote for the guy on the cover of Playboy who's on his third marriage, who brags about assaulting women. I thought, wait a second, why is this standard for me? Why
Grab
can
him
I
by the
not?
hoo-ha. I mean, he can do it. Why can't I?
Right. I can't even be a volunteer leader at my church if I was having premarital sex with my girlfriend,
Right.
let alone cheating on my wife or grabbing women. Right. And so that was a moment where I thought, something seems really wrong here. I'm not understanding how the logic is functioning that gives people the moral justification. And by the way, and I'm pulling here from Scott Coley. He wrote the book Ministers of Propaganda. He makes a great point that I agree with. The moral relativists are the evangelicals in my perspective, because I remember Franklin Graham telling us that how can a man lead the nation if he can't lead his family, Bill Clinton, but suddenly Trump, who clearly cannot lead his family at all based on these actions, is somehow fit for office, right? So the goalposts have shifted. The moral relativism is actually found more in those spaces than not. And so I think that was the beginning of me having to do a deeper dive, a more critical examination of the faith I inherited. And then eventually between Black Lives Matter and COVID, I thought to myself, something just it's way wrong. My
Yeah.
tradition seems like they're on the wrong side of these conversations. I don't understand where it's coming from. So I launched the New Evangelicals in December of 2020 in my attic on Instagram, just asking questions. I had no vision of grandeur. No nonprofit experience, no content creator experience. I just started
Right.
posting, asking questions.
Yeah.
And it turns out that was right when the deconstruction explosion was happening. People found us. We blew up very quickly. And, 3 years later, now I'm doing this work full time.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. And a lot of similarities in a lot of ways. Obviously, probably 2016. I mean, for me, I had the experience of our church was very involved with Trump came to our church. I met him, did the whole thing.
Yeah.
I was very much involved in that, space and stuff. But I'm curious, once you did start to ask those questions and kind of start to leave all that, what was that rejection like for you, kind of on a personal level? Did you have a lot of people that you knew or friends push back and say, no, I'm not going to, or what was that like for you?
Well, to be clear, I didn't leave. The church left me.
Yeah, right.
Initially, I had this. So I got the name the New Evangelicals after I saw Sean Foyt holding his maskless worship gatherings. I thought to myself, I'm a worship guy. I'm in the church drumming. I don't understand what the hell this guy's doing. Like, I don't know how this is biblical, how this is loving. And this was before vaccines were out. This was before we really knew how this thing spread. People were still wiping down surfaces. And here's
but
Sean
the church
Foyt,
was being persecuted. I mean,
totally, according to Sean, right? And I'm like, and again, I want to be so clear, especially because this will be on X, and so I can share it with people so they understand.
Yeah.
I was always a small church guy. I critiqued megachurch when I was within white evangelicalism. I had major problems with it. COVID for me, I was like, great, we can go back to a house church model. 1 or 2 people in a small group, breaking bread, doing life together. Like, there was a major opportunity in my mind to like, great, let's get rid of the show and let's go back to our roots, right? So to watch Sean Foyt be like, we can't hold these mass gatherings right now, we're being persecuted, faith over fear. I'm like, dude, how is this loving our neighbor? How is this bringing any kind of a Christian ethic to a time that is filled with uncertainty and people are dying? And so that's when I got the name, the New Evangelicals. And then what I did was I typed up, I was just imagining, like, what would this look like? So I typed up like 7 or 8 statements on like sexuality and life and the church. And they were all honestly pretty moderate statements. I was not fully affirming yet. But I ran it by a few pastor friends of mine. Like, hey, I had this idea. Don't know what I'll do with it. What do you think? And they were all like, yeah, they're pretty good statements. So I didn't like deconstruct and lose my faith and then start the New Evangelicals. In fact, I never lost my faith. I started the new Evangelicals out of, I want to better follow my faith. I have questions here. What does a better path forward look like? So I'm still serving at my church at this point. My church followed all the COVID restrictions, which was great. We're back to services, and I start TNE December 2020. Mm-hmm. April of 2021, I'm a volunteer drummer, not paid on staff, just doing my stuff at TNE, asking questions. And it was there that my senior pastor gave me an ultimatum: either stop serving as a volunteer drummer or stop doing what I was doing online with TNE. I wasn't doing that full time. There was no nonprofit status. It was just a labor of love. And so the church put me in that predicament to either do one or the other. So I resigned my spot as a volunteer drummer of 6 years. I was all in on that church. I was every pastor's dream. I was the all-in volunteer there whenever the church was open. And I resigned, and I never, looked back. And within about a month or two, 90% of those relationships completely dissolved. People just stopped answering my texts. They stopped responding to me. And so, so I didn't walk out of my church. My church put me in a position that said, you either do this or you do that. And I said, well, there's something happening here with TNE. I don't know what. I'm hearing a lot of people's stories of their experience in church. I'm changing a lot of my views. I have to keep going down this path and see where it leads. So I had to leave this behind. So I did.
Jeez, that's so unfortunate. So it goes against, like you said, everything that, because we're supposed to break bread with the people that don't even believe what we believe. So what was the?
I'll put it this way: I was willing to hold space for folks who saw the world very different than me at that church. There were people in that church who were QAnon supporters, who were just posting MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. I never told my pastor, hey, like, we should talk to them. The body of Christ, it's big, it's diverse, and not everyone has to see it my way. And I was meeting with my pastor once a month to get coffee just to catch up. Like, I was very intentional, letting him know I'm not a threat at all to your church. I'm not talking about this stuff publicly, or I
Right.
should retract that. I'm not talking about this work at the church. Like, I'm just here to be part of the community and do what I love. But yeah, I mean, it was very painful. It really hurt, but it's a reality. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, as we kind of covered your background, let's get into the good stuff, the meat here, the
Sure.
Trump nationalism. First
Mm.
of all, shout out to all 100 people watching on X. Definitely the most views we've gotten on X so
Look at
far.
that.
And
Maybe my favorite person ever, Megan Basham, is watching. She loves me. And
ooh,
I would love to say hi, Megan. You should come on my podcast. We can have a civil conversation. I promise. I will treat you with respect, but I have a lot of questions for you. So
well, that's why I love to. You actually brought on someone a while ago, maybe a year ago, that I was again involved with their community and knew them personally, Russell Johnson and stuff.
oh, Russell
But
Johnson.
oh man,
We talk all the time. I mean, maybe
yeah,
I shouldn't say that publicly, but we do. Like, he calls me, I call him.
that's good. Well, look,
It's
he's
a
he's
weird
a nice
relationship.
guy.
He is a nice guy.
He is a nice guy and stuff. But and
Uh,
I honestly I have a lot of respect that you two. I mean, man, I think we need more conversations like that where it's
yeah.
two sides that can agree to disagree, and I think you also made some great clarifications on him for him about what kind of this movement is.
Totally.
Like,
I mean, frankly, I've talked to a lot of people publicly. I talked to William Wolf on our podcast before. I've
yeah,
talked to Honest Youth Pastor on our podcast, Russell Johnson. I've met people like Samuel Say
yeah,
at things like America Fest. So I have no problem talking to those people. I mean, what are we going to do? Unlike our Christian nationalist counterparts, we don't believe in destroying our enemies. We believe in loving our enemies, even our political ones, right? So I don't
yes,
really see much of an option besides trying to build some kind of bridge that says, look, dude, we're on the same planet together. We got to make this work. And me demonizing you or refusing to talk to you isn't going to accomplish that. Now, to be clear, that's not everyone's job or role. I'm a white bro evangelical passing dude. I have no problem doing that, but someone's got to do it at some point, I think, so yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. So with the kind of Christian nationalism, Trump nationalism,
Yeah.
I know I want to say that obviously the Trump version exploded in 2016, right, when he came on and started going to churches and doing all that, put the groups of pastors together to counsel him on certain issues and things.
Yeah. His faith
Um,
council.
right, but where do you think just kind of this Christian nationalism got to the place where somebody like Trump could take off and manipulate it and do what he did with it? Because and I know your co-host April talks a lot about this. I grew up the same way, right? Obama was the devil,
Yeah,
and I believed
totally.
that, and so I heard that rhetoric, but it exploded in 2015, 2016, right?
Yeah, I think there are actually a lot of factors here. I think that Trump is a fruit of what the moral majority laid down in the late 80s with Jerry Falwell. I think Trump is the fruit of a talk radio complex that consistently told its audience that the mainstream media hates you and is just full of liberal elites and that don't believe anything that they say. Here's a different set of facts to kind of go by and think about. And also, I think that people like you and me that were in that world when Obama was around just didn't see how deeply racist and misogynistic and hateful these folks were at the time. A great book on this is Anthea Butler's book, White Evangelical Racism. She tracks what was going on during the Tea Party movement. And it's like, I read it. I'm like, I didn't know this was happening. And I knew the Tea Party. I mean, I was close to it. I didn't see any of this stuff at the time. So I think, frankly, Trump is just the fruit of what happens when not when Christians get political, because I get this all the time. Are you a reverse Christian nationalist? No. Okay. Political engagement as Christians is, I would argue, an ethical obligation. MLK, right, got involved in the political landscape because of his faith. The question is, what are we advocating for? Are we trying to hoard power and privilege for our sake at the expense of our neighbors, or are we trying to divest our power and privilege for the sake of our neighbors, right? I mean, put bluntly, Christian nationalism, or I'll put it this way, Jesus teaches us to bear a cross for our enemies, and Christian nationalism wants to build crosses for theirs. That's the difference. It's not
That's
about
so
are we
good.
political or not. Of course we should be. The phrase Christ is Lord, that is the Apostle Paul giving the middle finger to the empire, because
Yeah.
the phrase was Caesar is Lord, right? So of course we have to be involved in how we organize as a society as Christians. The key is, what are we advocating for? And Christian nationalism is a very particular vision of what a Christian state would look like. Usually it's in bed with white supremacy or with some kind of ethno-nationalism. I mean, this is like the work of Stephen Wolfe. And again, we've covered this extensively on our podcast multiple times. So if people want receipts, they can go there and watch the videos. But there's something attached to the type of Christian vision that Christian nationalism has for America. Usually it's usually baked in patriarchy. It's usually baked where some people are at the top of the food chain and everyone else assimilates into it. So it's a different kind of vision than just maybe what would be like a Black liberation theology, right? Or what MLK was advocating for, or the work of the social justice movement, which is trying to build more equitable systems that actually benefit all of their neighbors, even their LGBTQ plus ones, even their BIPOC ones, right? And that are open to hearing from a plethora of diverse voices. Christian nationalism is opposed to all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay, so yeah, it's kind of starts in the '80s. Somebody like, and like you said, Trump is the product of all of this, and then you have all of these now self-proclaimed, right, modern day prophets. People again, like Lance Walnew,
Yeah, NAR, right? New Apostolic Reformation, right?
right,
Yeah.
Mario Murillo, all these crazy,
totally.
that now are start coming on the scene and going, you can't be a Christian and vote Democrat. You are signing your ticket to hell if you're doing these types of things and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because it's like where it felt so sudden to be that extreme, and no pushback whatsoever. It felt like just a lot of okay, you're right.
So yeah, there are kind of two things happening here, right? I mean, I'm not sure about you, but I grew up being taught that you can't be a Democrat and a Christian. I grew up much more reformed. So that's kind of been in like the moral majority zeitgeist, like since I think like the 80s, since they kind of took over the party in that way and kind of attached political fidelity to the RNC and salvation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Were you going to say something? I don't want to cut you off.
No. Yeah, okay. No, I was you said it, yeah.
But the NAR is very interesting. I really recommend whoever's listening to this, look up the work of Matthew Taylor. He has a new book out, The Violent Take It by Force. He is the source on tracking the New Apostolic Reformation. I've had him on the podcast many times. He is so great. I'm going to paraphrase some of what he says here. And Matthew, if you're watching, I'm sorry if I butcher it. But the NAR has actually been around for a long time. They've been around since I think even like early 80s, really, is when they kind of started this. It got a public stage when Trump courted some of those leaders and the adjacent charismatic leaders into his faith council.
Right.
And so I remember in 2016, to your point, watching these prophets who I never heard of saying, I'm prophesying that Trump is going to win. And then in 2020, same thing, right? Trump is going to win the election no matter what happens. I'm like, who are these people? Well, the NAR is kind of like maybe the source for a lot of this. But I people often say, like, where are we in the scheme of like American Christian history? I think that we are in the age of the charismatic. We're in the age of the charismatic theology of the supernatural, how they view it, speaking in tongues, prophecy,
right.
I declare it, that kind of stuff. That has permeated even more reform spaces because this demon ideology now, I hear from people who are much more in the John MacArthur space, right? That this is demonic, this is evil. So I think that really the charismatic movement, and in particular the NAR, have been the catalyst of a lot of what we've seen with the rhetoric being raised. I mean, Sean Foyt is kind of in that space, right? People like Lance Walnow, the architect behind the 7 Mountain Mandate, which is a very popular idea that Christians are to take over the 7 mountains of influence to make America Christian again. It all comes from those spaces. So it's been there for a while, but I think it's gotten more radicalized over time, and Trump and that movement have been feeding off of each other, right? So for example, you have people like, is it Jack Hibbs? No, I actually no, it's Lance, who's like, hey, you know what? Trump is like a modern day Cyrus. Yes, let me take
Right.
this biblical figure, map it onto Trump to give people the theological justification to excuse Trump's abhorrent behavior and language and actions, and ground it in some kind of theological reality for people to be able to vote for him no matter what. So
Right.
that they're really good at doing that, right? They'll pull people that maybe we weren't taught about at all in Sunday school, like what feels like an arbitrary person to us, like Cyrus, and go, look, no, it's actually this is the new prophecy.
Right.
The Lord has declared that Trump is a new Cyrus, and then their followers go, well, you're a man of God. You have the anointing of God. So that must be right. That must be a proper exegesis, right? That must be a proper interpretation of who Trump is, because look at Cyrus. That's how the system works. And they're always finding new biblical characters to map onto their political champions to justify why this person is on God's side and why their political opponents are on Satan's side. And I think the most damning thing about this is that when you start calling people demonic or influenced by demons, what you're saying is that they are not redeemable, because demons inherently are not redeemable. Demons don't repent. Demons don't change, right? Demons seek and destroy. So when you tell people the Democrats are really the Demoncrats, right? They're ruled by Satan. What you're telling your base is, hey, these people will not work with you. They can't be reasoned with. We only have one option: to destroy them, whether it's politically or sometimes even physically.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so weird because, like you said, that feels all so new. I mean, you look at somebody like Billy Graham back in the 80s, where he was the speaker for both the RNC and the DNC. He was praying for both, this, whole rhetoric of that you're going to hell, whether you vote for one person or the other. Your salvation is now based on a vote instead of your belief in Christ. And, I think
Yeah.
is so.
I mean, this is why I say, like, fundamentalism does not take the Bible or the gospel seriously.
Yeah.
They completely map it onto a particular political ideology where your salvation, your Christian card, is in jeopardy. And by the way, we push back often on folks in our spaces who say, well, Christian nationalists aren't real Christians. And we say, no, they absolutely are. Like, Christianity is way bigger than whatever stream you're a part of. And there has been a Christian stream historically that loves to get in bed with empire and become the ruling class. We can look at this all throughout our Christian tradition. So once we tell people, hey, you're not the true Christian, what we do is, it's not our place to ever say that anyway. But number two, we absolve ourselves from the responsibility of holding our own accountable.
Yeah. Well, and I'll be honest, I think one of the biggest things that deconstruction has kind of taught me is that I may disagree vehemently with those people and stuff and all that, but God's grace and what he died for is so much bigger than what I can understand or what I disagree. I don't know their hearts. I don't know their relationship and stuff. And that's so much bigger than me. That's between, them and God. And so for me, that's kind of taught me that, like you said, it's not that they're not Christians. I do believe that they're Christians and stuff. We just disagree on, certain things and stuff, but I don't think their salvation is based off of the little things of their theologies or politics or that type of thing.
Yeah.
Having conversations with those types of people and people like Russell Johnson or any of those others that are on that side, do you think like they'll ever change their minds? Do you think there'll ever be a point? I mean, there is kind of a thing happening. Methodists have definitely become more accepting. I know in the last year they had their convention now allowing LGBTQ plus to be on board on staff and ministry and things. Lutherans have always do you think there's ever going to be a time when people like that are going to possibly come around to some of these ways or see some of the points that we're making now?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think it depends on who we're talking about. Charlie Kirk, for example, probably never will, because think about it. Charlie Kirk is running a massive multi-million-dollar organization that's growing like crazy. He has the phone number of presidents and vice presidents and vice presidential candidates, in his phone. He's able to talk to them. In his mind, he probably thinks that God is blessing him, right? That this is a sign that I'm on God's side. I think that's really hard to walk away from economically, when it comes to your notoriety, what you're known for, and the fact that, again, God is blessing him in his perspective. I think that the people in the pews, the average churchgoer, can be persuaded. I think that we have seen some change, even though it's slow. But I also think it just depends on what we're talking about. I mean, again, we can look to history. We can look to American history. We can see how long it took for white evangelicals to come around to realizing that segregation is actually really bad and, dare we use the word, sinful, right? I mean, Bob Jones, don't forget, wrote a sermon where he said, "Hey, those who fight segregation are giving into the world. They are liberals, right? And we shouldn't.
Yeah.
They don't take the Bible seriously." So this was a dominant perspective in white evangelicalism for a long time. But now most people, I wish I could say all, but most people would say, no, that was a really bad thing, a really bad idea. So I hope that that's the case in the next 10 to 15 years. But I think when it comes to a lot of these leaders, your Mark Driscolls, your Megan Bashams, et cetera, they don't have there's no incentive to change, right? For them, they live in an echo chamber where everyone sings their praises. Everyone tells them how great they are. They write books that sell, make a lot of money, probably. They have notoriety. They probably go to a lot of big events, hanging out with people in power. To them, that's a green flag. Look at God. Look at what God's doing through me. Look at how God is using me. Obviously, I'm on the right side if I have all of this success, so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And kind of to talk about that too, I know you mentioned you being, and that's what I also love about you too, is you don't just talk about these things like kind of from the outset. You meet with people, you go places. You've been to a lot of conventions, to the Charlie Kirk Turning Point things, and to other things. So you've kind of seen these things from the inside perspective too. What has that experience been like as far as going there, meeting, talking with these people, and yeah.
I love going to those events. I mean, because they give me a firsthand account of what's going on. So when I talk about this stuff, people know I'm not BSing them. I actually go and hang out. I try and be as open as possible. I honestly like talking to these people. I've met Charlie Kirk several times. We've had a few short conversations. I've met William Wolf in person. Like I said, I mean, I've met these people. I like doing that. I like them knowing that I'm a human being, that I'm not just a name, that I see them as a human being, not just a name, and I'm willing to talk to them
Yeah.
publicly or privately, right? Also, it gives me a really good grasp on what's going on. What are they advocating for? What is the overall vibe like, right? You can watch anyone speak online and say, okay, their words are damaging, or here's why I disagree, or here's why I agree. But going into, for example, America Fest, which is hosted by Turning Point, 14,000 plus people, you can't get that experience by watching it online. Being in the room, seeing all the vendors, having all thousands of little micro conversations off the record that just kind of give you the perspective that these folks hold, being able to see some of the nuance, like some of the differences between those on the stage and those actually who are just attending. That really helps me get a more full picture of what Christian nationalism is, what's actually happening in the conservative movement right now, et cetera. So I enjoy going, even though it's a lot, it's heavy. I feel it really as part of my duty to be a part of it.
Yeah. As we kind of wrap up, because I know you've got to get going soon and stuff. What do you think? There are obviously now with the election two scenarios, and so I'm curious, what do you think Christian nationalism looks like after the election? Either way, if it goes towards Trump or if it goes towards Kamala, I think they'll find another Trump. Has been my opinion. It's just somebody else to.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, let's be clear. Trumpism is here. Trumpism has taken over the party. The RNC didn't have Bush there. Romney wasn't there. Paul Ryan wasn't there. Tucker Carlson was there. Charlie Kirk was there. Right? I mean, these are the people now who have taken over the party 100%. And so when Trump goes away, Vivek Ramaswamy will pick up the mantle, or someone else, right? And just kind of keep pushing it. After the election, my take is that Christian nationalism is emboldened either way. Either they're emboldened because their guy won, or they're emboldened because their guy lost, right? Excuse me. And that's the thing. There's very little, if any, fair play in Christian nationalism because they don't know how to lose. They don't know how to concede. It's not baked into the ethos. Why do you think Charlie Kirk can say all kinds of stuff that is verifiably not true and will never acknowledge that he made a mistake? Why do you think Ali Stuckey, I can't think of, and I followed her for years, can't think of one time where she said, hey guys, I had said something on the podcast yesterday that was completely untrue. I am so sorry. I will commit to doing better. Because they don't know how to, or they know what they refuse to just say I was wrong. Because the whole ethos is built on winning and destroying and conquering and being on the side of truth. And so therefore they're always right. To the point where J.D. Vance will go on a national stage. He will be asked by Tim Walz a very simple question. Can you admit that Donald Trump lost the election in 2020? This is like saying, can you admit that the earth is round? Right. There are mounds of data. And if anyone's watching on X right now who doesn't agree with me, just know that Dinesh D'Souza's documentary, 10,000 or 1,000 Mules, was pulled by the distributor for being false. Like, they acknowledged it was not true. So, like, there is just no evidence anywhere, even by the own team, that the election was stolen. The fact that J.D. Vance could not say the obvious should tell you something. It should tell you something. It should tell you that these folks so often participate in a world that is not based in reality. Again, moral relativism.
Yeah.
It doesn't, this moral point or this data point does not serve my interests. So I will ignore it and I will reinvent a narrative that says, no, the election indeed was stolen. I don't care what 62 lawsuits said. I don't care what the judges said in those scenarios. I don't care if they're Trump appointed judges. Trump is my epistemology. Trump is the source of my truth. So if Trump says it's true, it's true. If Trump says it's false, it's false. That's how this world operates more and more. And then you have these theological these Christian pundits whose job is to take the Bible and the Christian faith and mold it into whatever supports Trump for president. Right. That's why we've seen people like Al Mohler, who in 2016 was like, I'm never voting for Trump, now fully embrace Trumpism, right? And defend Trumpism and defend why Trump is the only moral choice. The goalposts have shifted. They're moral relativists. They're not actually holding on to any kind of objective truth at all. They're actually willing to shift and change moral frameworks whenever it suits them.
Jeez. Yeah, I would agree, and I think that either way, like you said, they're gonna find this as a win and just come back in some sort of way, with or without Trump as a new person. It's
totally.
Gonna be
So
it's concerning in that sense, but I think the work that you're doing, I think the work of this type of stuff is so important and so needed. The conversations that you're having and the awareness, I think that you're spreading, to that there are people within our sect that are Christians and call them and believe in that see the damage that this is causing and all of that. And I know, you're a big proponent of pushing all of that and stuff. And so,
I mean, there's just such a better path forward available to us as Christ followers. We don't have to choose between the rights and dignity of our queer neighbors or God. Like that's a false choice. And there are amazing theologians and scholars and Bible nerds and genuine Jesus people, right, who have way better perspectives and thoughts on how we think about this Christian faith and the call of the Christian in 2024 America, right, to be on the side of the oppressed. This is Jesus. I've come to liberate the oppressed. And he wasn't talking about some invisible, just spiritual realm. It had real, tangible implications, right? And so, the options are not just leave faith entirely or become a MAGA-loving Christian nationalist. There is a massive spectrum full of people who are like, no, my faith and my allegiance to Jesus compels me to think about why affordable healthcare should be a right in this country. It compels me to think about the rights of my marginalized neighbors and to consider that maybe systemic racism is still happening and really affects people. And how do we fight for the liberation of those people, right? There's Christian ethics all over the place. Just because evangelical fundamentalism has their own bubble where they are their own gods and they create their own standards while pretending that they're standing on the clear biblical truth of whatever topic, doesn't mean it's actually true or that it's the only way. So I would encourage people to get outside the bubble, because my gosh, it's so nice not living in this weird tension of, oh, do I love my gay neighbor or do I love God? How about the way I love my gay neighbor is how I show my love to God, right? They're completely synergistic. They're not at odds, unlike what fundamentalism tells you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. With that, man, I just kind of one last question here. What, and especially with these type of topics and conversations and people like you, I always ask, what would you say to somebody who may be watching and is either just starting their deconstructing journey, may feel kind of lonely in the sense of, they're just starting this, may have been rejected or pushed away from their church, like you said, that the church left them. What would you say to encourage them to kind of, know that they're not alone, that there is more,
Yeah.
and yeah.
I would say just that. You're not alone. I mean, there are millions of people who have found themselves in the same situation you found yourself in, including me. When I started TNE, I had no idea. I was like, is anyone else out there thinking about this stuff? Turns out I was late to the party. I was one of thousands with very similar thoughts. You can follow our stuff online. We have a private Facebook community that you can join. It's all free. Everything we do is paywall free. There's no cost to anything because we're a nonprofit, and so people's generosity is what sustains us. But yeah, there's definitely people out there who are thinking like you and who want to find that better path forward. So join us.
Yeah. Well, with that, guys, thank you so much, Tim. Thank you so much for being here and for all the great information, a great conversation. Truly, I have so much respect for everything that you guys do and have done. I talk about you guys all the time to people because I just
super helpful.
I think it's so important, and I think it's, and the fire and passion that you have behind it is so genuine, and it feels so so great to see, because it's like you said, there are a lot of still similarities of your faith and still things that you believe. It's just
Yep.
We've been through this journey, so
I'm in. Listen, if there's one good thing that the church did to me, was it radicalized me to be a Jesus follower, and I can't shake that. There's something about this Jesus thing that I can never let go of. I'm all in it. I live and breathe this shit. I really do, and it's because I believe in it. So I appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
Of course, I appreciate you. With that, everybody watching on X, thank you so much. Everybody watching on YouTube, thank you as well. You can find us on YouTube. You can also find Tim and the New Evangelicals all on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, X, and all of those links are in the description below, so you can make sure and find them. You can see his website as well. With that, thank you, everybody, for watching. Tune in next time. We appreciate it, and we will see you all again. Peace out.